So I want you to think about the last time you tried to learn um, a massive, complex concept. Like, really think about it.
Right, like something totally outside your wheelhouse.
Exactly. Did you jump straight into a dense academic textbook, or did you, look for a simple analogy to make it finally quick?
I mean, for most of us, it's definitely the analogy. We need that bridge.
Yeah, because if you want to understand the cutting edge of modern pedagogical theory, like how to really hack the human brain to retain abstract information, you could go read a massive stack of neuroscience papers.
Which sounds exhausting, honestly.
It does. Or you could look at a children's Sunday school lesson from Uganda. It's titled, in all caps, "The Tree That Refused to Grow."
I love that title so much.
Right. Because today, we are taking a deep dive into that exact document. Our mission is to unpack how this single, super-focused text takes these massive theological concepts, specifically the idea of spiritual maturity, and distills them into incredibly practical, bite-sized lessons for kids.
It is a genuinely fascinating piece of curriculum design. I mean, it takes ideas that theologians write 1,000-page volumes about, and it engineers them into something a 7-year-old can instantly grasp.
It really does.
We so often think of religious instruction for children as just, rote memorization or telling old stories.
Yeah.
But when you actually analyze the mechanics of a document like this, you see a very sophisticated application of learning science.
And what hits you first is just the relentless joy of the document. Like, you open it and it immediately sets the stage.
Oh yeah, the energy is off the charts.
It instructs the teacher to welcome everyone, do an opening prayer, sing 2 happy songs, and it specifically says, quote, "Smile at everyone. Today is going to be FUN," in all caps.
Which is brilliant framing.
Yeah, and the core theme of the lesson is established right away. It's all about avoiding being what they call a baby Christian forever, and instead learning to grow big, strong, and like Jesus.
Which, again, is a very deliberate device.
Yeah.
I mean, no child wants to be called a baby.
Definitely not.
The entire aspiration of early childhood is to be bigger, to be older, to be stronger, to reach the top shelf. So right out of the gate, the lesson aligns this abstract, somewhat nebulous concept of spiritual maturity with the innate biological drive as a child.
It tethers a spiritual goal to something they already fiercely desire on a primal level.
Exactly.
And that brings us to how they actually explain this growth. The curriculum grounds this lofty idea in the most fundamental biological reality imaginable, which is eating.
Right, the most basic human need.
The big idea of the lesson is stated very simply. It says a child who eats every day grows strong, just as a Christian who spends time with Jesus grows strong.
It's a perfect parallel.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the lesson uses a specific anecdote that illustrates this perfectly. It's labeled a funny life lesson.
I love this part.
It tells the story of a little boy who prays to God, "Lord, make me taller." And the next morning, he eagerly measures himself. Nothing. No change. Right. So the next night, he prays louder. The next morning, still nothing. Finally, his mother comes in and tells him, "First, eat your chapati and pasho and muking."
What's fascinating here is the psychological mechanics of that localization. For context, chapati is a type of flatbread, pasho is a staple maize flour porridge, and mukin is a type of small, nutrient-dense fish.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, these are fundamental dietary staples in Uganda. By swapping out a generic word like food for highly specific, culturally resonant items that are literally sitting on the child's dinner plate that very evening, the curriculum shifts the lesson from semantic memory to episodic memory.
Wait, break that down for me. Semantic versus episodic.
Sure. So semantic memory is how we recall general facts, like the idea that food makes you grow. It's abstract.
Right.
Episodic memory, on the other hand, is tied to specific sensory experiences. By naming the exact foods a child smells and tastes every day, the chapati and the mukini, the lesson collapses the distance between the theological concept and the child's physical reality.
Oh, I see. It anchors this intangible concept of salvation to the immediate, tangible reality of their daily routine.
Exactly. It's not just an idea anymore. It's on their plate.
It makes it incredibly real. And there's an analogy here that I think translates perfectly to the modern adult world, specifically the wellness industry.
Oh, absolutely.
Think about someone who hopes to get incredibly fit purely by watching workout videos on YouTube or buying the expensive gym clothes or just just like wishing for it really hard rather than actually eating right, sweating, and lifting the weights.
You have to do the reps.
You have to do the reps. But I have to play devil's advocate here because this approach raises a red flag for me.
Okay, lay it on me.
Isn't telling a kid they have to do the work bordering on teaching them that faith is just a transaction? Like, if you eat, you grow. Do X, get Y. Doesn't the text risk-making spirituality sound like a chore?
That is a very valid critique, and it actually highlights a historical tension in theology, grace versus works. But from a developmental psychology perspective, children at this age need concrete cause and effect relationships.
They need it to be black and white.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The text is pushing back against the idea of passive religion. It's actively telling children that prayer isn't a magic wand. You can't just yell at the ceiling to get taller.
Right. Prayer alone isn't going to add an inch to your height.
Exactly. It's instilling the idea that maturity, whether physical or spiritual, requires active, disciplined participation. You have agency. You aren't just waiting for lightning to strike. You have to actually eat the McKean.
But knowing that action is required creates a completely new problem for a kid. Action is exhausting.
It really is.
If I'm a 7-year-old, how do I know what kind of action actually counts? Because the curriculum shifts gears entirely right here. It moves from this highly relatable food metaphor into a classic biblical case study to redefine what doing the work actually means.
Right. It brings in the story of Mary and Martha from the Gospel of Luke. It's a very famous narrative about prioritization, and it perfectly addresses that question of what kind of action is valuable.
Yes, and here is how the lesson frames it for the kids. It describes Mary sitting peacefully near Jesus. Meanwhile, Martha is just frantic.
She's doing everything.
Exactly. The text emphasizes this by listing out her distractions. It says she is surrounded by the kitchen, water, food, more plates, more cooking.
Just utter chaos.
Finally, Martha just snaps. She complains to Jesus, telling him to make Mary help her with all this work, and Jesus just smiles and says, "Martha, you are worried about many things, but Mary chose the best thing."
The contrast there is so sharp.
And then the lesson delivers this incredibly blunt takeaway for the kids. It says, imagine missing church or missing Jesus because you were washing plates.
It's a stark visual contrast. You have the intentional stillness of Mary versus the chaotic, frantic energy of Martha.
Here's where it gets really interesting and honestly highly paradoxical.
Yeah.
We just talked about how the lesson used food, specifically pasho and chapati, as the ultimate metaphor for doing the right thing, the necessary action to grow.
Right.
But literally on the very next page, the act of preparing that food, of cooking and washing the plates, is framed as the ultimate distraction.
It is a bit of a whiplash.
Yeah. How can the text use food as the model for growth and then instantly turn around and make the preparation of food the cautionary tale?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we see that the lesson is navigating a very sophisticated critique of what we might call the cognitive load of busyness.
Okay, tell me more about that.
The contradiction you pointed out is entirely intentional. It forces a deeper level of understanding. Yes, daily habits are necessary for growth. But the Martha story warns against becoming so consumed by the mechanics of those habits that you miss the core purpose. Psychologically speaking, humans often default to mechanical tasks like washing dishes or organizing a desk because they provide an immediate low-stakes sense of accomplishment.
It's easy to check off a list.
Exactly. It is much easier to wash a plate than to sit in stillness and confront deep spiritual or personal truths.
Oh, that is so true. It's like procrastinating on a massive project at work by answering 50 trivial emails.
Yes.
You feel incredibly busy, you feel productive, but you are actively avoiding the actual important work.
Exactly. And that's what the curriculum is teaching these children. It's teaching prioritization. Martha is doing objectively good things, serving guests, preparing a meal, but she's doing them at the expense of the best thing, which is being present.
Wow, that's a sophisticated critique.
It really is. It is a warning against letting the maintenance of life overshadow the meaning of life. You can be incredibly active, running around washing all the plates, and still be completely absent from the actual moment.
So, if being frantic and busy like Martha isn't the right path, what about the people who do show up? What about the people who sit there like Mary, but maybe their minds are entirely somewhere else?
Because it's easy to fake being present.
Exactly. Because the lesson doesn't let anyone off the hook here. It tackles this exact scenario next. It looks at the hollow participants.
This is where the curriculum pushes for a surprisingly high level of critical self-reflection for its young audience.
Right.
It challenges the illusion of competence.
Meaning
It's not just about being in the room, it's about how your brain is engaging while you are in the room.
The text poses this specific, almost humorous discussion question to the kids. It asks, quote, "Can someone come to church every Sunday, eat all the biscuits, sing all the songs, say amen, and still not grow?"
Such a great question.
And it provides references to the books of James and Matthew to back this up. Then it lists out the specific active habits that actually do help children grow spiritually: reading the Bible, praying, attending home cell groups, listening, and obeying.
It's drawing a hard line between outward performance and inward transformation. It's acknowledging a sociological truth.
Which is?
Religious spaces, like any social spaces, have rituals that are very easy to mimic. You can perform the cultural script without engaging the internal engine of growth.
So what does this all mean? To me, the phrase eating all the biscuits and singing all the songs is just the perfect encapsulation of passive consumption. This happens everywhere.
Oh, absolutely everywhere.
Think about the modern illusion of learning. It's the equivalent of paying for a master class online, letting it play on your laptop in the background while you fold laundry or scroll on your phone, and never actually doing any of the assignments or taking notes.
You're just absorbing the vibe.
Right. You get the little digital certificate of attendance at the end. You feel like you've accomplished something because you were in the proximity of knowledge, but you didn't learn a single thing. You didn't grow. You just ate the biscuits.
This raises an important question about the psychology of passive consumption versus active transformation. Why is this such a vital lesson for a 7-year-old?
Why do you think?
Because the human brain is inherently lazy. It wants to conserve energy. If it can get the social reward of being part of the group just by eating the biscuits and mouthing the words to the songs, it will choose that path of least resistance every time.
That makes total sense.
So the pedagogical move here is shifting the child's locus of control.
Locus of control, meaning who is in charge of the outcome.
Exactly. When a child just shows up and eats the biscuits, they have an external locus of control. They're assuming the environment, the church, the teacher, the music will magically make them grow.
They're just a passenger.
Right. By asking, can you do all this and still not grow? The teacher is forcing the child to realize that external proximity does not equal internal change. It shifts the locus of control inward.
That's powerful.
It tells the child your growth is entirely dependent on your active, conscious engagement. You're listening, you're reading, you're obeying.
It's incredibly empowering, but also a bit daunting. It tells them their growth is in their own hands. But of course, the modern world makes that kind of active, conscious engagement almost impossible.
It's an uphill battle.
It really is. And once the lesson defines what active participation looks like, it immediately identifies the obstacles pulling kids away from it. And this is where the curriculum gets intensely practical and hyper-modern.
It has to. You can't just tell a child to build quiet, daily habits without acknowledging the environmental realities that are actively at war with their attention span.
Exactly. The lesson provides a list of things that stop spiritual growth. It lists too much TV, too much phone, TikTok in all caps, too many games, being lazy, and not praying.
I love that TikTok made the list.
I just have to pause on the inclusion of TikTok there. Imagine this Sunday school teacher standing in front of a room of kids, explicitly viewing the TikTok algorithm as a direct, identifiable barrier to their spiritual growth.
It's wild to think about.
It is this fascinating glimpse into the modern digital battles happening in classrooms everywhere. TikTok is listed right alongside the ancient concept of laziness and the spiritual failure of not praying. It elevates a social media app to a genuine spiritual obstacle.
And from a cognitive development standpoint, the teacher is absolutely right to target it.
Really?
Yeah, think about it. If the goal of the lesson is deep, reflective, slow growth, the kind of growth that comes from daily reading, sustained listening, and internalizing abstract concepts, the platform designed to deliver rapid-fire, dopamine-driven micro-entertainment is the exact antithesis of that goal.
It's the ultimate Martha environment.
Precisely. TikTok is digital Martha. It is frantic, constant activity jumping from one plate to the next that prevents you from ever sitting still and focusing on a singular message. It fractures attention.
Wow, digital Martha. That's so accurate.
So the curriculum is correctly identifying the modern engine of distraction that prevents the very stillness required for the growth they are trying to foster.
So how does a Sunday school teacher actually combat the multi-billion-dollar TikTok dopamine machine?
It's not easy.
No, it's not. The lesson ends with what it calls a fun game to cement everything they've just learned. The leader tells everyone to stand up. If the leader shouts, "Grow," the kids have to stretch their hands up to the sky as high as they can.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
If the leader shouts, "S.P," The kids have to freeze completely still, like a statue. And the stakes are real. The last person caught moving when they're supposed to be frozen has to recite one Bible verse they know in front of everyone.
This is where the lesson design truly shines. Earlier, we talked about needing a bridge to understand abstract concepts. This game is a classic somatic learning tool. Somatic meaning it integrates the body and the mind.
But how does playing statue actually help a kid understand theology?
It has to do with how the brain builds neural pathways. When you just tell a child about growth or stagnation, you are relying entirely on their prefrontal cortex to intellectually process a linguistic concept.
Right, which is pretty dry.
Exactly. But when you introduce somatic learning, you activate the motor cortex and the body's proprioceptive system. That's its sense of space and movement. The game takes the entire abstract theme of the lesson and forces the child to physicalize it.
So they literally embody it.
Yes. When they hear grow, their muscles have to stretch upward. They feel what expansion, effort, and reaching feels like in their actual joints. When they hear stop, they feel the tension and restriction of being frozen, of stagnating.
So they aren't just thinking about the concept anymore, they're feeling it in their muscle memory.
Exactly. It bypasses the purely intellectual processing and creates a physical sensory anchor for the memory. It proves that the body is just as important in the learning process as the brain.
That's amazing.
And the curriculum pairs this physical game with a highly calculated retention strategy at the very end.
Oh, yes. The document explicitly instructs the teacher to ask, "What have you learned today?" And then they repeat a memory verse together. But the instruction is not just to say it, they have to repeat it 3 times and louder each time.
Which is just a brilliant pedagogical move.
Louder each time. I love that. You can just picture a room full of kids screaming at the top of their lungs by the 3rd round.
It creates a massive wave of collective enthusiasm, but more importantly, it taps into what behavioral psychologists call the peak end rule.
I've heard of that. That's the idea that we don't remember experiences accurately, right? Like, we don't remember every single detail.
Correct. The peak end rule, popularized by Daniel Kahneman, shows that human beings don't evaluate an experience based on a comprehensive average of every minute. Our brains don't have the storage capacity for that.
Obviously not.
Instead, the brain heavily weights 2 specific moments: the emotional peak of the experience, whether positive or negative, and how the experience ends.
So it just grabs the highlights.
Exactly. From an evolutionary perspective, the brain prioritizes intense moments and resolutions so it can quickly predict if a similar situation in the future will be safe or dangerous, rewarding, or a waste of time.
So by having the kids scream the verse at the very end,
The teacher is intentionally engineering both a peak and an end simultaneously. They are artificially spiking the emotional and auditory intensity of the room right as the kids walk out the door.
wow.
The brain tags that high-energy, high-volume moment as important. It ensures that the final emotional note of the lesson is participatory and thrilling, ensuring the core lesson and the memory verse sticks with them long after they leave the building.
When you step back and look at the narrative arc of this single document, it's pretty remarkable.
It really is.
It takes you from the basic biological necessity of eating your kiapachi and pasho to grow, right into the sophisticated prioritization of Mary sitting still over a frantic Martha washing plates.
And then into the hollow comfort of the rituals.
Yes, it warns against just eating the church biscuits and singing the songs without actually undergoing any internal change. And finally, it names the modern pitfalls of TikTok and digital distraction, culminating in an exercise where the kids literally stretch up to the sky to feel what it means to Jiro W.
It is a truly holistic approach to education. It addresses the physical realities of the child, the intellectual paradoxes of prioritization, the emotional need for engagement, and the spiritual goals of the community, all in one short session.
It balances profound concepts with immediate practical application.
Yeah, it's a masterclass, really.
Which leaves us with a final thought to mull over, and this goes far beyond a Sunday school classroom in Uganda. The lesson warns these children that you can show up, you can eat all the biscuits, you can sing all the songs, and still not grow a single inch.
A sobering thought.
It is. So looking at your own adult life, whether it is in your career, your relationships, your health, or your personal goals, where are you just eating the biscuits? Where are you going through the motions, mistaking a comfortable, familiar routine for actual, meaningful growth?